She thought it was just a walk. But the forest turned into a trap. Stay with me, because this is the story of a woman who was surrounded by bandits deep in the woods, and the lone police officer who stepped out of the shadows to save her, turning a moment of fear into a battle for survival. I was walking along the narrow path, breathing in the sharp scent of pine, when suddenly I heard footsteps behind me. Shadows shifted, and several men emerged from between the trees. Their voices were rough, their laughter cruel, and my heart dropped like a stone. I tried to move faster, but within seconds they circled around me, blocking every way out. "Where do you think you're going, pretty?" one of them sneered, stepping closer. Fear gripped me, my throat tightened, and I froze. The forest, once quiet and calm, now felt like a cage. Just as I thought there was no escape, a voice cut through the darkness, strong and commanding. "Step away from her. Now." Out of the shadows walked a man in uniform. The beam of his flashlight caught his badge, his hand steady on his holster, his eyes sharp with unshakable resolve. He stood tall and calm, but every line of his body radiated readiness for a fight. The bandits looked at each other, smirks faltering under the weight of his presence. I felt my breath return, my pulse still racing, but now for the first time that night I knew I wasn't alone anymore. One of the bandits tried to laugh it off, though his voice cracked just slightly. "You picked the wrong forest, officer. Walk away, and maybe we'll forget you were here." But the policeman didn't move. His tone cut like steel. "Last warning. Let her go." He stepped forward, the crunch of his boots on dry leaves echoing in the tense silence. The beam of his flashlight swept across their faces, and for the first time I saw the hesitation in their eyes. He didn't need to shout, the authority in his voice and the way his hand hovered near his holster was enough to change the air itself, thickening it with danger. I clutched my hands together, breath shallow, my fear shifting into something else, a fierce certainty that he would not let them harm me. His shoulders were broad, his stance unshakable, like a shield planted firmly between me and the shadows. The bandits shuffled, their bravado slipping as they realized this wasn't just any man, this was someone trained, someone who would not back down. And for the first time, the fear was no longer mine. It was theirs. The largest of the men spat to the side and growled, taking a step forward as if to test him. "Big words for one man," he said, his hand twitching toward the knife at his belt. But the officer didn't flinch. His stance widened just slightly, his hand now resting firm on his weapon. His voice dropped lower, steady as the forest itself. "Try me. And it'll be the last mistake you ever make." The silence that followed was crushing. Even the trees seemed to hold their breath. The other men shifted uneasily, eyes darting between their leader and the officer whose presence filled the clearing like a storm about to break. Behind him, I felt the shield of his strength. My fear was still there, but it was different now, sharpened into a rush of adrenaline, into trust. He hadn't looked back once, hadn't asked me if I was all right. He didn't need to. His whole body spoke for him, "You're safe. I've got you." The bandit's sneer faltered. He tried to chuckle, but the sound was thin, nervous. The officer took another deliberate step closer, his eyes locked on them, and suddenly the balance shifted, they were no longer the hunters. They were the ones cornered. The leader's hand froze halfway to his knife, his bravado cracking under the weight of the officer's stare. The silence stretched until it felt unbearable, then the officer's voice rang out, low and deadly calm. "Drop it. All of you. Or I promise you won't walk out of these woods the same." One of the men cursed under his breath and backed away a step, the darkness no longer hiding his fear. Another shifted nervously, eyes flicking to the trees as if calculating an escape. The officer didn't move, didn't blink, his presence alone holding them like a trap they couldn't break free from. I could see the struggle in their faces, the ugly mix of pride and fear, but the forest seemed to press in tighter around us, and with every passing second the officer's dominance grew heavier. Finally, the leader let out a frustrated growl and slowly lifted his hands. "This isn't over," he spat, though his voice lacked conviction. One by one, the others followed, stepping back into the shadows, their threat dissolving with every retreating footstep. Only when the last figure disappeared into the trees did the officer lower his hand from his holster. He turned to me at last, his eyes softer now but still fierce with protective fire. "You're safe," he said simply, his voice gentler than I expected. And in that moment, with the echo of danger still lingering in the air, I knew I could finally breathe again, because he had been there. My knees nearly gave out as the weight of what had just happened crashed down on me. The forest no longer felt like a cage, but my body still trembled with leftover fear. He noticed instantly, his hand, firm yet careful, came to rest on my arm, grounding me. "Easy," he murmured, his voice low but steady. "They're gone. You're safe with me now." The authority he'd carried moments ago melted into something warmer, something that wrapped around me like the strongest kind of shield. His eyes searched mine, and for the first time I saw more than duty in them. There was concern, and something deeper I couldn't name. I tried to speak, but my voice caught in my throat. Instead, I managed a faint nod, clutching onto the fabric of his sleeve as though it was the only solid thing in this vast, shadowed forest. He didn't pull away. If anything, his grip on me tightened, quiet reassurance in the darkness. The adrenaline still pulsed through me, but it was changing now, blending with a different kind of heat that spread from where his hand touched me. And as he stood there, unshaken, watching me as though I was the only person in the world, I realized something undeniable: he hadn't just saved me. He had claimed a part of me I wasn't sure I'd ever get back. His presence filled the clearing, not with tension anymore, but with a strength that wrapped around me like armor. I could still hear the echo of footsteps fading into the woods, yet all I felt was the steady beat of his pulse through the hand that held my arm. "You're shaking," he said softly, his voice no longer the steel that had cut through the night, but something gentler, almost intimate. I wanted to answer, to tell him it was only fear, but that would have been a lie. It wasn't just fear that made me tremble, it was him, the way he looked at me now. His eyes were sharp, yes, but beneath that sharpness was a fire I hadn't expected. I clung tighter to his sleeve, as if my body had made the choice before my mind could. His lips curved slightly, not quite a smile, but enough to tell me he understood. He stepped closer, so close the scent of leather and faint gunpowder clung to the air between us, making my chest tighten. "You don't have to be afraid anymore," he murmured, his forehead nearly brushing mine. "Not as long as I'm here." The forest was silent now, but inside me everything roared, and I realized I wasn't afraid at all. Not anymore. Not with him. His words lingered in the air, low and steady, and I felt myself leaning into them as if they were the only thing holding me upright. The forest around us blurred, fading into shadow and silence, while the sharp line of his jaw and the fierce glint in his eyes became the only things I could see. His hand slid from my arm to my waist, slow, deliberate, grounding me even as it sent a rush of heat through my veins. He was still the officer who had faced down danger without flinching, but now, in this closeness, I could feel the man beneath the badge, strong, unyielding, but achingly human. I lifted my gaze to him, and the moment our eyes locked, it was as if he'd already read the answer I hadn't spoken aloud. His breath brushed against my cheek, warm, uneven, and it stole mine away in return. The tension between us no longer came from fear. It was something else, sharper, deeper, alive. And when his thumb brushed lightly against my side, I knew with absolute certainty that whatever had begun here, in this dark forest, had only just started. The weight of his touch anchored me, yet at the same time it set me adrift in something I couldn't fight. His hand lingered at my waist, firm and steady, while his other hand lifted just slightly, brushing a loose strand of hair away from my face. The gesture was small, but it made my breath hitch, made my chest tighten. His eyes searched mine, closer now than ever, and in them I saw no hesitation, only the same fire that burned inside me, wild and unspoken. The world was still, the forest silent, as though even nature waited for what would happen next. When he spoke, his voice was rougher, edged with something he no longer bothered to hide. "You don't understand. I couldn't walk away, not from you." The confession sent a shiver through me, stronger than fear ever had. My fingers tightened around his sleeve, pulling him closer, and I felt the line between protector and stranger blur until it disappeared completely. The danger of the night was gone, but another danger, the kind that made my pulse race for a different reason, had taken its place. And in his arms, I knew I wasn't going to resist it. His forehead brushed against mine, the closeness so overwhelming I could barely breathe. The badge on his chest pressed lightly against me, a reminder of who he was, the man who had faced down shadows and pulled me back into the light. But now there was no uniform, no duty, only him, raw and unguarded. His thumb traced slowly along my jaw, tilting my face just enough so I couldn't look anywhere but into his eyes. "You're safe," he whispered again, but this time it didn't sound like reassurance. It sounded like a vow, a claim, a truth he needed me to believe. My lips parted, but no words came. Instead, my body leaned into him, surrendering to the inevitability of the moment. His breath mingled with mine, hot and uneven, and the silence between us cracked under the weight of everything unsaid. Then his mouth found mine. The kiss was firm, decisive, but behind its strength was something deeper, relief, need, a fire he'd been holding back until now. His hand tightened at my waist, drawing me against him, and the world outside that clearing vanished. There were no bandits, no fear, no forest. There was only him, the man who had saved me and, without asking, had taken hold of something far more dangerous, my heart. The kiss deepened, slow at first, then heavier, as though he was pouring into it all the tension of the fight, all the restraint he had carried until now. His grip on my waist grew stronger, pulling me flush against him, and I felt the solid beat of his heart hammering in sync with mine. I clung to his shoulders, fingers digging into the rough fabric of his uniform, searching for steadiness even as I gave in to the rush of heat that spread through me. Every line of his body spoke of strength and control, but in that moment, I sensed something more, a vulnerability he was only showing me. When he finally pulled back, his breath was ragged, his lips hovering just above mine, his forehead resting against me. His voice came low, uneven, stripped of all the authority he had used moments before. "I thought I was here to protect you," he whispered, "but it's me who can't let you go." The forest around us seemed to exhale with those words, and I realized the truth I'd been afraid to face. The danger was over, but something far more powerful had begun. His words sank into me like fire through my veins, leaving no room for doubt. His hand slid up my back, strong and steady, holding me as though he feared the night itself might steal me away. His breath was hot against my cheek, his lips hovering so close it felt like the world had narrowed to that single point between us. I pressed closer, my fingers curling tighter into his shoulders, and the rough edge of his uniform only made the warmth of his body more intoxicating. Every beat of his heart thudded into me, unrelenting, as if it were demanding an answer I already knew I couldn't deny. He pulled back just enough to look at me. His eyes dark and burning, stripped of hesitation. "You're mine now," he said, quiet but absolute, each word cutting deeper than the silence. And though my lips trembled, no protest came. Instead, I leaned into him fully, giving him everything in that moment, because I understood. I already belonged to him. His lips claimed mine again, this time fiercer, hungrier, as though he needed to seal the vow he had just spoken. His hands slid into my hair, fingers tightening just enough to hold me there, and the heat of the kiss sent waves of fire racing through me. I melted against him, my body yielding, yet every inch of me was alive with the sharp edge of his control. The roughness of his touch, the steadiness of his grip, the unshakable way he held me, it all told me the same thing: he wasn't going to let me slip away. When he finally broke the kiss, it was only to press his forehead to mine, his breath ragged, his voice low and hoarse. "You don't understand," he whispered. "I'd fight the whole world for you, and I won't let anyone take you from me." His words wrapped around me like iron and flame all at once, and as I clutched tighter to his uniform, trembling in his hold, I knew the danger had ended in the forest, but with him, something even more dangerous had just begun. His arms closed tighter around me, crushing the space that was left, and I felt caged and sheltered at once. His breath scorched against my neck as his lips grazed my skin, slow and deliberate, leaving trails that made my body shiver. My fingers curled into the fabric at his back, clinging as though the ground beneath us had vanished and he was the only thing keeping me upright. He murmured low, the sound rough, vibrating through me. "You don't get it. I can't stop now. Not after tonight." The authority in his tone, the same voice that had sent the bandits running, now belonged only to me, commanding, consuming, undeniable. Every part of me responded, heat flooding through my veins as if his words themselves had claimed me. I tilted my face toward him, and our lips crashed together again, no hesitation, no restraint. The forest around us was silent, but inside everything roared, his strength, my surrender, the dangerous fire between us. And in that fire, I knew there was no going back. His kiss grew rougher, deeper, until I could hardly breathe, yet I didn't want to pull away. His hands roamed down my sides, gripping my hips with a possessive strength that made my whole body tremble. The press of him against me was unyielding, solid, and every second in his hold only fed the storm that had ignited between us. When he finally tore his mouth from mine, his lips dragged hot along my jaw to my ear. His breath came hard, uneven, and his words slipped out low and raw, almost a growl. "You're not leaving me. Not now. Not ever." The promise, the command, the certainty in his voice struck through me like lightning. My fingers dug into his back, desperate and willing all at once, because I knew he was right. The forest, the danger, the fear, all of it was behind us. What bound me to him now was stronger, more terrifying, more intoxicating than any threat I'd faced tonight. And as I met his eyes, dark with fire, I realized with dizzying clarity, I didn't want to escape. His eyes locked onto mine, burning with a hunger that left no room for doubt, no space for retreat. One of his hands slid up my back, pressing me harder against him, while the other cradled my face, forcing me to hold his gaze even as my chest heaved with shallow, uneven breaths. "You feel it," he said, his voice low, rough, every word striking like a command. "The same fire that's tearing me apart." I couldn't answer, my voice was lost, stolen by the intensity between us. Instead, my body betrayed me, leaning into him, clinging tighter, my lips parting in silent surrender. His expression darkened with satisfaction, as though my silence was the only confirmation he needed. Then his mouth was on mine again, harder, deeper, leaving no space for air, only the raw heat of his claim. His kiss wasn't gentle, it was fierce, demanding, and I gave in to it fully, my nails digging into his shoulders as if to prove I wouldn't let him go either. The forest, the night, the danger, all of it had fallen away. There was only him now, the man who had saved me, the man who was consuming me, and the terrifying truth that I no longer wanted to be free. His grip tightened, unrelenting, as though he feared the night might steal me from his arms if he loosened even for a second. His kiss was fire and storm, every movement filled with a raw urgency that left me trembling and breathless. My body pressed into his instinctively, answering a call that had nothing to do with fear anymore, only with the force that pulled us together. When he broke away, just enough to let air pass between us, his forehead rested hard against mine, his breath scorching, uneven. His hand cupped my jaw, thumb brushing across my trembling lips as he whispered, voice rough, almost broken. "You're mine. No one touches you. No one takes you. Not while I breathe." The words sank deep, unshakable, binding me tighter than his arms ever could. My eyes fluttered shut, my chest rising against his with every ragged inhale, and I knew, the man who had saved me from the bandits was no longer just a protector. He was something far more dangerous. And yet, as I clung to him, heart racing, I also knew the truth, I didn't want saving anymore. I wanted him. His lips crashed back onto mine, fiercer than before, like he needed to brand me with the certainty of his words. His hand slid deeper into my hair, tugging gently but firmly, holding me exactly where he wanted me, while the other anchored me against the hard line of his body. The world spun, the forest disappeared, all I could feel was the fire of him consuming me. I gasped against his mouth, but he swallowed the sound, relentless, unyielding, and I melted into him, powerless yet unwilling to resist. My fingers clawed at his shoulders, desperate to keep him close, desperate to show I was his as much as he claimed me. When he finally tore his lips from mine, his mouth trailed down my neck, hot and demanding, each touch setting my skin ablaze. His breath was ragged, his words spilling against my throat like a vow he could no longer hold back. "You belong to me now, and nothing in this world will change that." The echo of danger still lingered in the night, but it was nothing compared to the danger thrumming between us. And in his arms, bound by his strength, by his fire, I knew there was no turning back, because I didn't want to. His mouth lingered against my skin, each kiss rougher, more urgent, as though he was carving his claim into me with every touch. His breath seared along my neck, his grip on my waist unrelenting, and my body arched toward him without hesitation, caught in the pull of something I couldn't fight even if I tried. I clung to him, fingers buried in the fabric of his uniform, feeling the hard strength of his chest beneath. Every beat of his heart pounded into me, wild and forceful, echoing my own racing pulse. His voice came low, raw, vibrating against my skin. "You're mine, and I'll never let you go. Do you understand?" The words weren't a question. They were a decree. My lips parted, trembling, and though I couldn't form the words, my body answered for me, pressing closer, surrendering completely. His eyes met mine then, dark, fierce, but burning with a fire that was more than possession. It was need, unstoppable and consuming. And as he kissed me again, harder than before, I realized the forest hadn't just been the place he saved me. It had become the place where I was claimed, bound to him forever. His kiss was the final strike, deep and unyielding, leaving no space between us, no breath unshared. His hands held me as if I was the only thing keeping him alive, and in that desperate, burning closeness I felt the truth of every word he had spoken. When he finally pulled back, his forehead pressed to mine, his voice came low and steady, not a promise but a vow etched into the night. "You're mine now. No shadows, no fear, no one will ever take you from me. The forest stood silent, the danger long gone, yet my heart still thundered as if the world itself had shifted. And in his arms, with his strength wrapped around me, I knew it had, because I no longer belonged to myself. I belonged to him.